call this regular meeting of Mulberry City Commission to order. It is Tuesday, June 21st. It is 6 o'clock. If you would please rise for the invocation by Coach Smith. And followed by the
Can you do it from there? He's hurting.
Oh, I'm sorry, Colin.
Gracious Father, just once again we come just to say thank you. Thank you for the many blessings that you've stored upon us. And as we go through this meeting tonight, we ask that you be in the midst. Bless all our sick and shut in, ones that are just going through. Father, we just ask these blessings in your name. Your name, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May be seated. Thank you, Commissioner Smith. Roll call, Madam City Clerk.
Thank you.
Commissioner Knight,
Here.
Commissioner McClintock,
Here.
Commissioner Devine,
Here.
Commissioner Smith,
Here.
Commissioner Dolan. Here. City Manager Johnson,
Here.
Mayor Hatch.
Here.
And Attorney.
He's running late. Here. Oh, there he is, right there.
Okay.
Right here.
Present.
Say here.
Here.
First thing on the agenda is the minutes of the last regular meeting on June the 7th. What's the pleasure, Commissioner? Approval. Motion made by Commissioner Devine, seconded by Commissioner McClintock. You see how quick I came up with that name?
Yes.
Any additions, changes? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? They are approved. Come on down, Big John, where are you? You're on the wrong side.
Good afternoon, John Wright, Public Works Utilities Director. This is Bobby Williams, he's painting the railing up at the skate park. He's gonna do some painting and do some concrete repair work that we're seeing that was messed up. And this is a sewer line over on Northwest Fourth Avenue. I can't remember the address, but, guys, not too far from the house, but it was, cleaning that out. And this is, we took this motor apart for the kiddie pool, put it together and got another one, and then they gave us the wrong color, so we had to take it back apart. And that's why the weight pool was down for a while. And this is, I don't know, maybe stuff marks it just there, but we're making the floor back, touching that up. And this is, you'll see a valve over there, some of y'all commissioners seen this valve before. Brought it in and showed us Commissioner Knight. We're doing a cut-in valve right here across the street on Southwest Phosphate Boulevard. Get this water to stop because I shut it from here to Diesel Road, from Highway 60 to 4th Street. All these valves are firing, still have water, so. That's why we had to dig it up, get it loaded, get the pipe, get it back. Do the cut-in. And then Public Works, we had 168 work orders, utilities, we had 132, locates, we had 104, and total was 24.
Any questions from John? Yeah? Thank you, sir. Very good. Hey, your other brother, John? Yeah. Come on, Dad.
John Wasman, Finance Director. I only have a few things to report this evening.
Yes.
Rick and I have gotten the framework for the budget started, and we're slowly working on that together to fill that out. I'm currently waiting on the Department of Revenue revenue sharing. I'm also waiting, on Martin Fox, the property appraiser, to release the July 1st figures, so that we can do a calculation, make a determination of what the CRA is also going to be bringing in this year. Sometime within the next month, don't surprise through the year, sometime in the next month, we will bring a resolution before the commission to set the maximum millage rate that will appear on the, trend notice, see what the city, the upper limit of what the city can charge. That's established by a resolution. We can't go any higher than that, but we can go lower. So Drew and I will look at that and we'll bring that back to you. And that's all I have to see.
Any questions for our finance director? Thank you, sir. Come on down, Ron.
Ron Warchers, Planning and Development Director for the City of Mulberry. Before I get started with my presentation, I would like to introduce our newest employee, part-time administrative assistant Judy Puig. If she would stand up.
Thank you. Glad to have you, young lady.
And we are certainly glad to have her. She is, got us organized, and just a couple of weeks that she's been here has been a tremendous asset to our development, our work down there. Planning and development. A lot going on. Bridgeport Phase 1, the picture on the right is the last foundation that's being built on. That puts them all either in a stage of completion or completed. So Phase 1 is in theory finished. And so Bridgeport Phase 3, out of the 73 homes, in the short time, they've got 62 permits out of 73 homes available to be built in here.
2 or 3?
Two. Okay, back up, yeah, that one. And they're just, I mean, it's just going up like wildfire, but like I said, 62 out of 63 homes or blocks have been permits issued. Bridgeport Phase 3, we finally got all the, approvals in, and they have started clearing, which they'll just keep on going, and this is at the end of Phase 2, going right into that development. It's land clearing for now. Phase 4, while we're on this site, Phase 4 will be 101 lots. We just got the engineering first approval on the construction plans that had been submitted. That was in today. I sent it off to the developer for them to make, to either revise or whatever. Fire and Safety, Polk County Fire and Safety should have their review into us tomorrow. We'll go back and forth for a couple of times, and then they'll be ready to start construction, or, start construction in Phase 4.
What will be the total number of homes when this development is built out?
Total build out will be close to 700 homes. Right now, we have, I think, I had it all tallied up, and I didn't bring that tally, but I think we have close to 500 for something already in the first 4 phases, ready to go.
Wow.
But total build out will be right at 700, give or take. Victoria by the Lakes, they've really started looking like a development now. This would be the main road, or the road going in, and they've really been going great guns out there, so we're looking forward to seeing paving going down, and that will be 35 homes.
Thought that was 40-some, wasn't it?
The original site plan and the first developer was gonna be 45 homes. The new person that bought this out, scaled it back to 35 homes. Park Ridge is same thing, going great guns. They have, you can see some of the foundations already poured for some of the different apartment buildings, as well as the clubhouse. The picture on the right, I was gonna drive in, but they had that all tore up yesterday when we went out to take pictures. But, seem like they're on track. Mr. Car Wash, we just released a permit today for construction. We still have to get a letter from FDOT, but there's not gonna be a problem with that, so we did release those construction permits. So we should start seeing activity on them shortly. And that's out front of Walmart. No changes yet on the RV and Ski Paradise. I have been in communication with, Gus's engineer over this past week. He and I were discussing certain items. So it is on track to be submitted within the next couple of months, probably to, start going through the approval process on that. But we're looking forward to seeing that development go. The apartment complex, completely approved. They're working with their engineer now to get the final construction drawings done. That's gonna take a while to finish that. I know there were some questions last time as far as, access, but again, that is a state road there, so access is completely controlled by them. We do not have a say-so in where that will be or whatever. And then the last one, I talked with the engineer yesterday afternoon, because I'm starting to get a little bit concerned that I have not seen any paperwork coming back through, and they assured me that the developer is still intending on developing that site. But
Where is that?
Yeah.
that's right across from the library.
Oh,
Oh,
And that will be 96 rental condos. That's one that's been approved for like ever, 2007, I think. And then I will stand for questions.
Well, I have one, but I remember the city manager talking about, water. And this car washing, I know there's a term you use, recycle, they gonna use recycled water?
They're- Those
they
car
will
washes
recycle
are,
their water, they will recycle
Yeah.
their water.
Okay,
they're required pretty much to do that anymore with these new car washes.
okay, I was just cool.
Any questions?
I have one, any of these two new ones that don't have names, is somebody named them yet? Like Victoria by the Lakes and Bridgeport, whatever it is?
Which,
The one up by Wendy's, that hadn't been named yet?
no, it has not been named yet.
Okay, and the one out off Fifth Street hadn't been named
No.
yet?
Well, they have right now, it's still being called Pine Cove,
Okay.
but, will be apartments.
No, the one off Fourth and Fifth has had about half a dozen names, I think. every
Oh,
time.
yeah, it changes back and forth, but the new apartments up by Wendy's, no, there hasn't been a name assigned to them.
The,
Go ahead.
I guess the exit coming out from the lawn, by the lawnmower shop. What is that, do you have any idea what that's gonna look like? Well, I guess my point is, I'm just curious, I know the lawnmower shop butts right up to the road, so I was wondering what kind of framework that's gonna look like.
When we did a land swap for that particular property with the lawnmower repair shop in
Yeah,
Jefferson,
see it.
or Ken, when I say Jeff. It'll be just a normal, it won't be a divided boulevard entrance or anything, but it will be just a normal entrance with access, of course, onto State Road 37. And again, that's gonna be dictated as far as, and there's no turn lanes that will be required, they've already done that analysis, but it'll be just a normal entrance to a subdivision. But we did that land swap, and in that land swap, we had assured them that they would have access to their back area where they have storage and everything, so that's being coordinated with the developer. Yeah, well, that's why we did that land swap, so there would be enough room, and we got a little bit more than the minimum requirement.
Yeah, I think it's 60 feet, what we have there.
I'm just assuming that area is gonna create some more traffic. And I'm just saying from the lawnmower shop to the buildings back there, so there's gonna be any lights, any
This,
type of.
it's a small, generator for traffic, a 35 unit housing development does not generate that much traffic. And that's why with the DOT study that, traffic study indicated no additional turn lanes or anything, so there will not be, there'll be more traffic, of course, from zero to something, so.
They're still working on that. I think I told you guys at the last meeting that we haven't heard anything other than Mulford Road, that intersection there generated substantially more traffic than what DOT had thought it would. So it sounds like they're gonna do something, but we don't know what it is. That has to go to committee or something, and I don't know if that means there'll be a light there. We're hoping that there will be, and hopefully that will impact in front of Bridgeport Lakes and potentially in front of this development as well, because there will be some stoppage of traffic, so you won't have to make that mad dash across there from Bridgeport Lakes. At least you'll have a little break in the traffic periodically, so.
I sort of didn't understand fully, you were talking about all of 37 as force of traffic, and that study's been recently completed by DOT.
We don't know any results.
No, not yet, just on purpose study.
We know that in front of Bridgeport, of course, it's early because there's only about 100 homes occupied probably. It's early for them to determine any impact of that traffic as opposed to final build out of 700. And I guess they figure how many cars per house, how many trips per day, they can kind of calculate it. But as far as the actual measurement that they took, they were taking just on existing properties. And that was the Mulford Road, Lake Point entrance road. That was the one that they felt that it was a lot higher than what they thought it was gonna be. And again, they didn't indicate to us what they were gonna do. It seemed like it will generate some sort of a traffic device there. Hopefully not just a blinking yellow or something. I don't think anybody can go.
I was thinking just further up the road there, that little park there, what is that? The mobile home park, where the old golf course used to be.
Oh, where?
Oh, Paradise Lakes.
Paradise Lakes, yeah.
Paradise Lakes.
Yeah. So that wouldn't affect the traffic either?
Well, that hasn't had any increase in traffic at Paradise Lakes. Now, you know, I think I had mentioned to you that we had talked about perhaps purchasing. We made an offer on some land there for a municipal complex. And of course, we would generate traffic. The
Right.
city would. The traffic we have here now would be transferred basically there.
Yeah.
Well, it's way too early for that. They wouldn't even consider that.
I have a question.
Does Bridgeport Lakes have a second entrance or exit?
They're
Just
gonna
that
have-
one road?
They will have
They will have.
an emergency entrance off of Virginia, and that was required by fire safety.
Will there be any, more access to 37 on the north side of the complex?
No.
I don't think they own enough land there.
There's not enough area for another full entrance, but, fire safety did require that emergency breakdown entrance in case of a hurricane blocks the main entrance or something does, and they'll have a way to get in and out.
And of course, people who live on Virginia aren't happy about it.
But it's only gonna be used in an emergency.
Right. Thank you, Ron.
Well, we're gonna monitor that, Ron, because I have a feeling once we give the green light for that to be used as an emergency entrance, it will then become a construction entrance, which that road cannot handle. As you remember, I think I told them I wanted to upgrade the road, and they didn't wanna do it, but I have a feeling we're gonna see that'll be the shortest distance going into phase 3.
Fair three.
And I just wanna keep an eye on that.
We'll keep an eye on that. That's not an emergency.
No, I just had that.
Yeah, you're right.
Yep.
So I've got a question. don't know if this is directed to the attorney, city manager, or planning director. Pine Cove, that was first talked about in 2007, 15 years ago.
Way back when, yeah.
Coach was the only person who was around as far as elected capacity at that point in time. Will we have a first and second reading and a vote to move that forward?
It is approved as a planned development. Unfortunately, back then, there was no time frame put on it, so it's a open book.
Okay.
We will have I think that we can bring it into a final hearing though, after we get what they're really planning on doing. I'll see about getting something before the board.
I'm gonna just hazard a guess that one of the concerns Neil has is the fact that we're dropping a new development into the middle of a lot of residential homes, and how that will impact the homes that are there.
As well as traffic.
In the high school,
Well, Ron and I have talked about this before. One of the issues that we have, I think I might have discussed this with Drew as well, is the fact that we have, if it's properly zoned, and it is, it's been approved as a PUD, as a planned unit development, there's very little that can be done, other than making sure that they meet the standards that we have set, that this commission has set. But they are approved to build, what has been approved, even if it was 15 years ago.
okay.
So, I know what happens is, we read in the paper about the county is saying no to this development, Lakeland's saying no to that development. What they're really mostly saying no to is the change in the zoning and future land use to allow those developments to go into maybe agricultural land or something like that. But as far as what's already approved, what the zoning is allowed, is what's allowed.
So there's nothing that we could do about that.
Well, Drew can speak to this better.
Yeah, right. Those are great questions, Commissioner. Whether we should try to get to the answers of those tonight is probably not the right idea. I think what we need to do, as far as Pine Cove is concerned, we've had internal conversations about this. We understand the issues with an older approved development. There are potentials that it might be non-conforming under our current zoning code. Nevertheless, whatever those issues are, your planning officer and I and city manager need to meet and figure out the way that moves forward. How that moves forward though depends on a lot on how the developer wants to move forward. Yeah, and so it may have to stop before you again. It may not, but whatever ultimately happens with that, we will make sure that we let you guys know what the approval process is, if any, as it starts to develop out.
And that PD back in 2007 was approved for 96 townhomes. And that's what they're coming in with is about the same footprint as that original approval. We've had runs at it to kick it back to a single family type development. This one is back to the original concept of the 96, and they're gonna do rentals. So we would not have any kind of a planning process. It's just a standard, like the apartment complex construction drawings. But we will monitor it, and they'll have to meet any kind of traffic improvements.
I have a question. Do apartments have to meet those Energy Star requirements like homes do?
You need Water Star?
Yeah, whatever it is.
Yeah, I think all development has to be Water Star.
They all have to be water star. Any kind of commercial development also is pretty much embedded in that.
That's the,
As far as the landscaping, I'm not sure about
and I
that.
think we could probably make a case to have them do the Florida friendly and either
Yeah.
the front or the back, whatever it was that's attached to that. I think it irritates me. And actually, in all the developers I dealt with prior, when I was in another city, there was a lot of development going on. They were really pretty flexible about landscaping requirements as far as what we would like to see there as far as canopy and so on and so forth. They were always pretty, that's probably the least of their expenses, and within reason, I think they were, it seemed as though they were pretty flexible with whatever the city's desires were.
Water Star does impose some extra requirements, Mayor, but, you know, Mulberry, it's pretty well known that Mulberry's been the progressive city on that, and we were the first in the county to adopt the Water Star ordinance, so I suspect that they're ready to comply with that.
Pretty much anymore, the, Water Star, the utilities or whatever, toilets and all that, you can't go to Home Depot and buy something that's not
Correct.
that.
Correct.
Thank you.
That it?
Yes, sir, thank you, sir.
Thank you, that was a good discussion, appreciate it.
Miss Julie, come on down.
You're welcome, Judy.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to have you.
Thank you. Not tonight, no report. I'm just glad to be here. Thank you to the mayor, Bill Stronger, and Mr. Cole.
Thank you, Miss Julie. You're up, sir.
And let me just say something real quick. Judy, who comes to us from Collier County, she has 33 years' experience in the planning and development, I guess. So she was a great client for us. And she moved to Mulberry just by coincidence, so we're excited to have her here.
He's not here.
Okay, all right.
He didn't come yet.
Good, good, good. All right, Mayor, thank you. There are 3 items of formal business in the day tonight. The first 2 items, Mayor, deal with Polk Regional Water Cooperative. They are back. The agreements are back. Let me, if I may briefly be recognized to explain what those are, and then let you guys move on to your discussion and vote. The Polk Regional Water Cooperative, in its last several meetings, has been negotiating with WIFIA. That's the Federal Environmental Protection Agency. That's their lending arm, under the Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act. And so WIFIA stands ready to loan several $100 million to the water cooperative. However, they have asked for some different language in the actual agreements. Mainly, this language firms up commitments that are made by larger partners. Now, what do I mean by that? Those are partners such as the City of Winter Haven, partners such as Haines City, Davenport, Lakeland, Polk County, those entities that are taking over an MGE worth of water out of one of the 2 different wells. And so these, the primary change deals with those partners' commitment and making that commitment firm, so that their percentages of their share of the capital expenses for these well projects will not change, at least, or won't be diminished during the period of the agreement. There's some other changes as well that I've summarized for you in the document, but they mostly all have to do with finance, and they're mostly all to make sure that if these WIFIA loans are processed, the WIFIA loans will be repaid. For us to continue to participate in these 2 agreements as project associates with no financial responsibility, we still need to approve them, however, because they are changes ultimately to the agreement. We need to have those forwarded over to the new water cooperative director, Mr. Eric DeHaven. So it's my recommendation that that the commission take action tonight in approving the 2 different agreements. There's one for the Southeast Wellfield and one for the West Polk Wellfield. And then also, in the same vein, approve them as approve the agreements and approve participation in the agreements as a project associate. That would not change any of our financial responsibility. It just simply, as this commission is well aware of, it would simply keep you a seat at the table. So if you do ultimately need to negotiate with the water cooperative to purchase water, excess water, or potential new water sources that develop in the future, we can do that.
Can you pause just for a second and probably bring Commissioner Knight up to date on what the water cooperative is?
Yeah.
I can do it, but
I
you
can,
don't have to
absolutely.
sound when I say it.
Well, and I hope that I can,
Like a 2nd grader.
hopefully I can take it down to a 2nd grade level.
Like an angry second.
Like an angry 2nd grade, well, there's a difference. No, the Polk Regional Water Cooperative, it was started as an outgrowth of an effort in the late 2000s to create a county-wide alternative water system. And so the 15 out of the 17 municipalities in Polk County, plus the county itself, formed the water cooperative, and I believe that was done in 2016, if I'm not mistaken, either 2016 or 2015. In any event, that entity is now negotiating with SwiftMud to take over production of a roughly 8 MGD or so, give or take, well at the Lakeland water plant. They're also have a permit in hand from the South Florida Water Management District to operate a roughly 30 MGD plant over near Liquids. And those are deep well projects. We're talking a lot further deep than our wells are right now. And that the water resources they generate would be circulated to all of the member governments that want to participate in these projects throughout the county. During negotiation over who was going to participate and who was not, several of the smaller municipalities realized that the project just by itself would be more expensive than potentially their annual budgets. And so cities like Mulberry, Eagle Lake, they decided, Fort Meade, the Polk City, they decided to participate in these agreements as what we call project associates. What that status allows them to do is have a seat at the table and potentially buy future water resources if they're needed and if they're available, but they don't have to take a financial commitment today on the equity in the plant, building the plant out. In the background, what that really means is if there is a developer that wants to build out a resource in town and needs that water, then the cost of building the plant, the alternative water resource, will be passed to the developer, right? So Mulberry approved the initial project agreements, both the Southeast Wellfield and the West Polk Wellfield, as participating as project associates. There's been an amended version that was circulated around. The City Commission unanimously approved that amended agreement. And now we're in another amendment cycle dealing with financing. And again, the principal core of the core change here deals with these anchor project participants that are the ones I already mentioned. Mulberry's financial situation would not change. The fact that we have access to the Polk Regional Water Cooperative means that if we have a development that's looking, or someone that's looking to develop their land, we can offer them the ability to participate in this project. So that's really the key behind it. It's just to make sure there's enough water resources to keep growth happening in the county.
And do we have enough water?
My understanding is yes.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
I'll jump in for a second. I'll back up a little bit more. What used to happen, you have a permit for your wells, for your city. And I think ours is about 825,000 gallons a day. And currently we pump averaging about 400 to 450,000 gallons per day. So we have enough, certainly for what we have here. We have estimated enough for all the current development that's on the slate. There are 8 developments on the board in the office. We have enough, assuming everybody works diligently and conserving water, we should be fine. What had happened was there was a thing 10 years ago, probably, where the county initially and SwiftMud, which is Southwest Florida Management District, they're the ones that sort of dictate whether if you want to increase in your permit or your well, if you had to go to them. And you used to be able to just apply. You say, hey, I got this 2,000 home thing coming and I'm going to need to pump for water for my well, on my plant. And it used to be that way, that you could just apply and whatever. But with water being sort of in short supply in Florida, they decided, SwiftMud, I guess it was originally decided, that we're not gonna deal with individual little cities all the time. I don't know why they did that. I'm sure there's a reason.
They're too big.
Well, I don't know why, but they said, we're not gonna deal with individual cities. We want you to form a cooperative, similar to Toho, I think, which is up in,
More similar to the Peace River, Minnesota, Water Authority down south, yeah.
okay, so to get together with these various, just get together and then buy water as a chunk. What's happened since then, I try real hard not to give my opinion on this. What's happened since then is it's been a little bit of a, it's changed, it's gone back and forth a little bit. And, so where it was in the beginning was there was a project over in the Frostproof area that was gonna be built. And the original design of this thing was all of the cities had to pay what they considered to be their fair share. And I think ours is like, 1% or something of the total cost. So for us, it was millions of dollars. And my concern at the time always was, well, Mulberry is never gonna see any water out of this Frostproof thing. But then, there was some talk of doing another project over here that was supposed to be done afterwards or whatever. Anyway, what happened was there was some litigation 4 years ago, where, the parties were banging this whole thing out, and the idea was that the, smaller cities that would get this huge financial burden for water that they didn't need, for one thing currently, we don't, that we could be called project associates and not project, what's the other thing? Participants. So we would still be a member, and we still get a bill every quarter for a few $100s or whatever that we pay, but just to be incidentals, pencils, or whatever they need over there. But we don't have to pay into this huge chunk, this millions of dollar thing. But as Drew said, if another development were to come in south of town, we have a development that wants to come in. I think we can handle the needs of that development in our current water plant and under our current permit. But let's say somebody wanted to build 5,000 homes south of the city. Well, we can't do anything with that, but they could pay that huge cost in order to build. We would say, look, if you want to build, we'll let you build, but you need to take on the burden of this millions of dollars, because the city's not gonna pay for it. The current taxpayers are not gonna make this payment. So that was the end result of this litigation that took place, where we're now, as the thing is before you, we don't have to financially participate in anything going on at this point, these millions of dollars. But the cities that, for instance, Davenport is, up near Disney, so they're building, thousands of houses. So they originally were little tiny Davenport, and now they need the water. So yeah, for them, it makes sense, because and of course the development's coming in, and they're getting all these dollars, and they're helping, and they're paying for all this stuff. But for us, we can just sort of sit back here and relax and not, we're gonna run out of room before we run out of water, currently by my estimates at this time. So the only thing would be is if you wanted to annex in a large piece south of the city, which is about the only way you go to the north or in Lakeland, that you could offer this to potential developers. Here, you wanna build desperately enough, and we know you're gonna make all kinds of money, you have to pay for it.
Right.
That's the bottom line, you have to pay for it.
So basically, we're pretty much in a situation where we're kind of like in the cat and mouse, any new development, they pay for their own water.
Well,
We don't have to borrow water from
no, that's the difference. Anytime we would go over a permit, they have to pay for it.
That's right.
Not any new development that comes in now. All these developments that Ron talks
Yeah, no, I'm
about,
not
we have
saying-
water for those people.
When we get maxed out,
Yeah.
which you say we never will.
Well, we may, but that's gonna be a future commission to decide this.
Yeah.
If we get maxed out, it's gonna be 10, 20, 30 years from now.
Coach and I won't be here.
A future commission
I'll let you take my car.
might say, hey, there's 5,000 homes south of the city that wanna be built on, Tom Mims has another 5,000 acres south of the city. And they wanna come in, okay, Tom, guess what, well, you're gonna have to pay the $10 million to participate in this. And if he feels that that's worthwhile on his part, it's a business decision on his part, then he will then do that. We wouldn't.
Yeah.
It's,
So what I was looking for was the hook.
That's right.
What's the downside? What happens to us if something unforeseen happens, and we have
well,
to go?
there was a huge potential downside in the beginning. That's why I've been against this
Yes.
from the beginning.
Yes.
I was very outspoken amongst all the city managers, all over, that I thought this was not a good deal. Things did change dramatically with this thing 3 or 4 years ago. And And so, and Drew is our sort of representative. I mean, he represents several cities. But he goes there, and he comes in, and he fills us in on everything that's going on, and keeps us up to date.
So I was waiting for you all to mention, because I think it's also important, the, like if we are not part of it now, and we don't hold that seat at the table as project associates, could you explain? So I don't remember exactly what the numbers
Yes.
are,
Yeah.
if we have to come in later.
It's a great question. So for entities that are members of the water cooperative but do not participate as a project associate, they still may be able to participate if the other board members let them, number one. And they have to pay a penalty of 7.5% or whatever the cost would be. That would be their share of the capital expense, and that can be millions. Right now, as a project associate, there also is a financial penalty, but it's much less than that. It's around 2.5%. So it ends up, taking whatever the penalty would be and shaving off 66% of it. The penalty is not designed to be burdensome, but it's just designed to make sure that entities that buy in at the start are compensated for their early buy-in and early financing of the program. One of the good things too, and I think while we're talking about the water cooperative as a whole, by the time I believe that Mulberry is slated to look to the water cooperative for future water needs, because Rick is right, Swiftmud is capping out the use of the upper Florida Aquifer, the kind of free resource we've had for generations here in Florida. The cooperative should be in the development stage for a large superficial type of reservoir aquifer, sort of a superficial aquifer, down in Fort Meade, south of Fort Meade. That's part of the plan. They're working on it. They call that the Peace River Project. That should provide up to about 15 million gallons a day of water for the uses of things like Mulberry, Fort Meade, Bartow. And you're talking really about, at that point in time, you're really talking about Mosaic's development, if they choose to develop into a residential community or something different other than what they are right now. Yeah. So the plans are they're all in the works. But yeah, project associate status was primarily designed for cities like Mulberry, so that there is not as heavy of a financial burden, and so they could still keep a foot in the door potentially for if and when the city growth happens in a way that we're not expecting right now today.
Because we have 2 square miles currently, basically, and almost everything's accounted for in terms of, there's not gonna be any large development unless you go outside of the city.
We're not looking to annex stuff.
I would say no, certainly not now, because we got all we can handle here.
We're getting in a west.
Not too, well, we got Landstar's,
Landstar.
south of 60, so
The north of 60, that's
we annexed
20 acres or whatever.
We annexed 200 acres there, Casey Industries, that's industrial at this time, I don't know if that'll change, but, I mean, I guess you could conceivably go past that on the north side of 60, but, I mean, you gotta kind of figure how big you wanna get.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if it's in the county would be responsible for that water, providing the water utility service. However, we wouldn't get tax money. The one thing you always run into is, if you were not to annex, but for instance, if Landstar suddenly was building, they're in the city, and they have their own water permit, so that's a whole different story. But the fact is, would you rather have Landstar be in the city or outside the city? Well, if you're in the city, we get the ad valorem taxes, property taxes from all their stuff. If they're outside the city, geographically, they're still there, and they're still gonna use our library, and they're still gonna use our services and our roads and everything else. So let's at least get the benefit of having them in the city. And I'm using them only as an example. If there's another piece that it might be worthwhile pursuing annexing in, if it's south of town and you wanted to bring in 5,000 acres, down there, at least you would have your development standards in place. It wouldn't be a bunch of shanties and whatever, and you would also have, think of like Potterville, and it's wonderful. And, at least you'd have your development standards and receive the income that would go along with it. mean, that's a conversation really unrelated to this, and something for future growth strategic planning, which we have coming up. That's a good conversation for that kind of stuff, but I don't foresee anything in the next many years that we have to really concern ourselves with.
I think it's worth noting for the record, Commissioner, that this is the nicest I've ever heard Chris speak about the water. I'm not.
Well done.
I appreciate the time.
Do we need to vote on these individually?
Yes, Mayor, I would recommend that you, take up each item individually. The first item, of course, I think that's on the agenda would be the Southeast Wellfield Agreement. And then my recommendation for a proper motion, once you've had gone through everything and had a public hearing and everything going on, would be that you approve the agreement, participation as the project associate, and authorize the mayor, the city manager, and the city attorney to take further actions that are necessary, in order to execute the agreement.
You may have to repeat that.
I would try. I would do so.
So first on is the, southeast wellfield,
I believe so.
it says SEW.
Yes, that's the Southeast Wellfield. That's the project over in Frostproof, Lake Wales. That's the 30 MGD plan that's in soft mud.
What's your pleasure, Commissioner?
Make that motion to follow staff recommendations per the agenda.
I second it.
A motion made by Commissioner Devine, seconded by Commissioner Dolan. Is there anyone in the audience wishes to speak to this? Seeing none, we will proceed. Commissioners, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? It passes unanimously. The next one is,
The West Polk Wellfield, Mayor. This is the roughly 8 MGD well that's situated on Lakeland's water plant premises right now.
the West Polk well field, easy for me to say. What's your pleasure, Commissioner?
I'll move for approval.
Motion made by Commissioner McClintock.
Second.
Devine did it already.
Oh, you did it too quick.
Learned early on. Is there anybody in the audience wishes to speak to this one? Now's the time. Seeing none, we'll close that. Is there any further discussion, Commissioners, on this? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that is passed.
Mayor, these items will be presented to the Polk Regional Water Cooperative at its next meeting. There likely would be, just while we're on the topic, there likely is going to be a discussion of a bond resolution that the board of directors of the water cooperative will issue to WIFIA. So it is moving fast and furious. Just to give you an idea of the project's cost, the last estimate, I believe, for the Southeast Wellfield was roughly $234 million, and I believe that the West Polk Wellfield was $93 million. I don't believe that either one of those have the transmission components listed in there, which that's a giant pipeline that runs up 27 and a giant pipeline that runs all the way to us on State Road 60. So you're looking at, $500 million potentially in revenue. The funding sources for these projects are going to be WIFIA, SRF, and then the members themselves, as well as SWIFMUD. SWIFMUD's component as well too.
So you can see where 1% of that would be kind of dramatic.
Yeah.
And the permanent scowl that this is left on my face.
All right, how about the third one?
Mayor, this one's a anticipated item. This item of business is the last one today, this afternoon, and it involves the approval of a purchase and sale agreement for 303 Northwest First Street.
Back up, we still got 9.3, the implementation agreement.
That was it. That was the south. That was for the, so this was just my staff member in addition.
So it was really only two things, not three.
That's correct.
Okay.
We're at 9.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, so this item is number 9.4 on your agenda, Commissioners. And it's the approval of the purchase and sale agreement with Babcock, WS Babcock Corporation for 303 Northwest First for the sum of $75,000.
Make the approval.
Second.
That's been, motion's been made by Commissioner Devine and seconded by Commissioner Knight. Yes, go ahead.
I have asked, Sharon, probably, Jane, somebody, to reach out to you guys, who, you are all members of the CRA board, as well as board member Mulaney, to, before our next meeting, which is, I think it's this Friday, to meet there at 5 o'clock on the site. Just for you, I have not had anyone kind of take me up on my offer to go out there. Just to kind of go through that, because there will be hopefully we'll have more information for you about the financing and going out the bid documents to get the construction stuff done on this property. And so I think it's important that you go in there and get an idea. I also think it's important if you get a chance to go to the joinery, because that's kind of the design that we're gonna be following. But I think it's important that you go on site and take a look at this. So I think the CRA board's gonna be at 5, and back here in convene. I don't know if we'll call it a meeting over there, but it's a site tour. And then there'll be certain restrictions with that Drew will tell you in terms of discussions, because you're meeting in the sunshine, but not, whatever. And so, then we'll be back here at 5:30 for the CRA board to approve whatever it is they're going to do. We've already met with the bank regarding this potential loan. And, just want to let you know, it's kind of the plan once this purchase is approved this evening, if you choose to approve.
Yes. Yeah, may I follow up with Mayor thinking? The meeting itself should not be anything to worry too much about. John Burke and I met with Rick, and we discussed what that might look like. These types of meetings do happen. It's essentially a noticed public meeting, so that way you all can gather on site together. You can all talk about the building, which is a topic that would come before you again as the CRA, without violating the sunshine law. So it'll be an announced public meeting. Really what I would do, and this is just kind of, since we won't have a chance to see each other until, assuming this is approved, of course. Since we won't have a chance to see each other until that meeting date on 7/5. When we meet out there, plan to keep your comments limited to just the discussion of that building alone. And I think that way you'll be on safe grounds.
Motion's been made to, approve this agreement with Badcock. I am. Motion by Commissioner Vine, seconded by Commissioner Knight. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak to this purchase? Have questions about it? Blah, 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 blah. All right, commissioners, any more comments or any more questions? Ready to vote? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It is passed unanimously.
And that's all the whole business on the day tonight.
John Boyd, please, and thank you. Thank you. Everybody signed in to speak. Good. We'll go straight to commission comments. Mr. Smith, you want to go first?
Yeah. I'd just like to apologize. I missed two important get-togethers. I don't like missing out either. I missed my Tuesday night. I was supposed to be in Olympics.
All-Star Sports Awards.
Supposed to be a very good sports award. And a young man from Bartow was being inducted, and I missed that interview. And then I'd already spoken to the city manager Thursday. I said, I'll see you later. Well, you know, you own these old rag houses, I'm always coming up. So, I'm trying to get a sewer fix. So I missed that meeting. So, if I oversee for missing that meal, I'll be willing to pay for it. The dinner that you guys mentioned.
Well, we got you covered.
Well, Coach,
I
we
appreciate
would
it.
have taken the trophy home if you would have not worked on those old raggedy houses.
Yeah. Is that right?
Yes.
Oh, so you missed one vote.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that right? Sorry. But, yeah, that was my problem, so. And, I just passed it on.
Thank you. Mr. Dolan?
Well, I attended the dinner on Thursday night. It was an excellent dinner. And I'm looking forward to Saturday night for the fried green tomatoes and the show. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Devine?
Somewhat redundant. I attended the Ridge League of Dinners as well. It was great to see all the scholarship recipients there receiving their scholarships. Much appreciated. I attended the All-Star Sports Award banquet the previous Tuesday. That was great to see the inductees. Judy, I'll welcome you again to the city of Mulberry. I've done it numerous times. Welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Glad to have you on board. I'll also be at the fried green tomatoes Saturday. Chelsea, I'm sure you've got fried green tomatoes as a side somewhere worked in there.
It's possible.
Got a request, Chelsea, if we could actually provide the happenings at the gym theater like we do for the library events.
Calendar's waiting.
Yeah, calendar.
We're working on it.
Okay, that works.
Thank you.
Got the word agenda on here, but I forgot why I got the word agenda on here, so I guess it's not that important. Oh, Sharon, she's not here today. At our last meeting, I asked if we can have the agenda received Friday. She provided that Friday. Thank you for that. July 19th, commission meeting end of July. I'll be installed as the first vice president of the Sons of the American Legion that Tuesday. So, commissioners and city manager, if it's at all possible, could we possibly move our commission meeting to the 22nd when we have a strategic meeting, if at all possible, so I can attend both? Looking at Rick right now.
When's your thing?
July 19th.
You wanna move the meeting to when?
July 22nd. Oh, is it okay? The day of the strategic planning, yeah. Yeah, I had my dates mixed up. Yeah, 21st.
We've got a meeting between now and then.
Okay. Rick Stephen's been deep thought.
Let me
I'll be here.
talk to
You can
him
move it if you want.
Okay.
and Sharon, when Sharon gets back.
Okay,
and see what-
that works.
And all that stuff.
And last but not least, we voted on the property known as the Badcock property. I've seen Trish Pfeiffer at the Ridge League of Dinners Tuesday night. She's the city commissioner in Bartow, and she's once again bragging on what Mulberry is doing. She's bragged about our gym theater, and now she's bragging about this Badcock property. So, that concludes my reports, my comments.
Thank you. Commissioner McClintock?
Yes, sir. Well, good evening, everyone. I just have a couple quick comments. On Thursday night, this past week, I went to the art opening over here at the Cultural Museum. It was very lovely. Some really creative pieces. And then, of course, I was at the Ridge League of Cities dinner with my fellow commissioners. It was a nice time to just catch up with everybody and have some time in a social setting to get to, chat about things, that are not business, of course, because we would never do that. And, I just wanted to say congratulations, yes, for our lawyer, just to let you know. And I want to say congratulations to all of the recipients of the scholarships. Definitely well deserved to just hear them talk about these students and just the way that they're excelling in their schools and in their communities and their extracurriculars. I mean, they definitely were excellent candidates for those scholarships, so that was awesome. And then I wanted to just say happy 4th of July. I can't believe I'm the only person that said that. So happy 4th of July.
We knew you were gonna say that.
I'm sorry?
We knew you were gonna say that.
Yes, save something for me to be the first to say. And just be very careful when you're playing with your fireworks. Pass them around.
Mr. Knight?
Thank you. This League of Cities dinner that we went to together, it was the first occasion for me to do such a thing. So it was, not that I haven't been to a lot of dinners in my life, but it was interesting to see how well everyone got along and how well everyone's on the same page as far as taking care of this county and all the little cities. And, I got to talk to half a dozen deputy sheriffs, captains, lieutenants, sergeants, because I gravitated, of course, to them. But, I did talk to a couple of, people who introduced themselves as vendors, and I pointed to him. That's the guy you wanna talk to, not me. So
Little do they realize.
So I enjoy doing that. And,
We all do that.
yeah. And like, Commissioner McClintock, I went to the art opening before the dinner. I got here early, so I went in, it was just me and the director and her assistant. And so I was looking at the art, it's all 4-inch blocks of artwork that each artist has submitted. There must have been, what, 30 of them?
42.
40, how many?
42.
Wow, I got a lot of pictures in my phone. I started taking pictures of them. There was only 3 of us in the room, right? So when I was getting down towards the end of the picture taking, I turned around and there's 50 people in the room. The place was packed. And I was so happy to see such a good turnout for our initial offering at the cultural center. It was really, really well done and very well organized. The food there, the little tray of food that they had was excellent. A little cup that you could eat with the berries in it, that was fantastic. Who thought that one up?
Publix.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Chelsea and her crew do a good job with that continuously. They continue to do great things over there. Me, couple things. I went to the chamber breakfast, it wasn't this week, it was last week. And, it came up quick because the first of the month was on a Wednesday, so it was like the 15th day of the month, so it came up quick. Because it's always the 3rd Wednesday. And, we had a good group, and the program was about ICAP. And if you wanna know what that is, come ask me and I'll tell you something. But, it's a secret, that's another whole thing. I wanna wish Sharon, if she's watching, a good conference where she is. I know she's having a good time. I see her post on Facebook. Also, if you get the Ledger, there was a young man on the front page of the sports section today. His name's Braden Glogauer. And his mom and daddy are Mulberry graduates, and he goes to Bartow High School. But he is a lacrosse player and is being considered for a national team in lacrosse. And he'll be a senior at Bartow High School this year. And I just wanted to commend that young man for all that he does. And for your information, Coach Smith, that's Lance Wilder's grandson.
Oh, okay, I thought that name was.
So, anywho, that's all I have. So we'll move on to the city manager.
Thank you. Got a couple of things. One thing, the cultural center, I appreciate you bringing that up, Commissioner Knight. I recall when we kind of put that together, we had a commissioner that said that, a former commissioner, that, was too fancy for the people of Mulberry, nobody will go there. You guess which person that was?
Kevin?
No. Kevin was the biggest supporter of the commissioners, he was always there, So, and I appreciate everything they do, and I haven't gotten over there yet, because we gotta leave so early to get to this summer too. I'll just go through a couple things we're working on. One thing I'll ask the commission, because we'll put it in for next year. Juneteenth kind of snuck up on us last year because they approved it the very next day. It was like everybody was off. And then we were gonna see about if you guys want, normally the city is traditionally over all the years has followed whatever the state's lead is on these things. But we do have the option of making an official holiday in the city of Mulberry. I just wanted to see if I can probably would require a vote, but I can just get the consensus going forward for planning purposes, if you guys would like to recognize that as a city holiday. Just
Yes.
City Hall.
all right, so we probably want to vote, make it a city, official city holiday.
Let me bring that back to you July 5, because we may need to do that by, depending upon resolution. Yeah, I'm not sure whether Mulberry would need to do that by resolution, potentially ordinance, depending upon how your ordinance book is written. But we'll absolutely take whatever formal action necessary to make sure that.
But there is a consensus of the commission to move forward with that, right?
Right.
So, okay, good. John Wright and I, as you may know, we eat lunch together almost every day, and then we drive the city for an hour and a half every day. Every quadrant, up and down every side street, everywhere.
How about my house to say hello? I live in Paradise Lake.
Except we don't live in Paradise Lakes. But, today, they were doing some we get locates in, you see them on John's report all the time, which are basically, to call 811 before you dig and all that kind of stuff. So when people are gonna do some work, they call the gas company and the local water utility and whoever, the home company, and then everybody has to converge on that spot and mark the lines, you see the little flags, sometimes you see paint, whatever. So they were doing some locates along 60 today, and one of John's guys came back and said, one of the fire hydrants that's out there along 60, there's a test thing behind it, so you can test the water, which is basically just a spigot like you have on the side of your house. He said, I noticed there was a green hose running out into the woods. John and I went out there and took a walk out into the woods, and there was a pretty impressive building out there that someone had built, probably 100 feet deep, I don't know, 60. I mean, there was like a wooden door on it and all kinds of stuff, so that was late in the day. We got some pictures and so on, but we're addressing that water theft at this point. And actually, Laura, I didn't get a chance to talk to you about it, it was late, it was about 3:34. Anyway, it was an interesting walk in the woods, and some enterprising people. I know the folks that are up near where this new 240 unit apartment complex sort of behind the car store, Wendy's and all that. There's some folks up there that were actually connected to the water spigot behind Dollar General Market, which then the hose ran across the parking lot. So I'm sure they had permission from them to do that. And from what I understand, there was a huge tent out there, and they actually had a queen bedroom set with dressers and mattress and box spring and everything out there. So they really had a nice setup out there.
Men's treasure.
So, anyway. Probably. If they leave, they come back. So. And they're not really bothering you. It's still water, but it's not so is this one. I got some good news from Ms. Young today.
Did you forget my name?
No, I just didn't, your hair was all back, you looked so formal, I didn't want to call you Chelsea tonight. Elvis will be returning to the city of Mount
Nice.
in February, and Elton John will be here in, what, November?
September 2nd.
September.
Nice.
So those are two more concerts that we have lined up. We're working on the Motowners. We're trying to meet their needs to perform here as well. Coming up soon, wedge everything in. As you know, the fall gets crazy with the Harvest Festival, Christmas break, the tree lighting and all that. So we're trying not to overwhelm everybody with that stuff. I think John Wasman mentioned to you that we're working on the budget. I think you guys are gonna be even more pleased than ever before because our reserves are scheduled to be dramatically increased this year. Going forward, we also are picking up some new vehicles that are long overdue. We have vehicles that were in Hurricane Katrina, like underwater for a long time during Hurricane Katrina. And they were a real bargain a couple of administrations ago. So we have those, they don't run very well. So we've actually gotten rid of a few of those. It was also, in case anyone was not there, and if you didn't know this already, Clark Environmental is being sold. So Beth and Jim will be leaving, although they're gonna be around for a little while, and they'll be in the sort of area, they have family very close by, and they will still be participating in our library events and our other events. Jim dressing up as various characters, so that's good news. There is I don't have anything else, although I just want to remind Drew, I think we talked to you about the municipal complex potential move. Drew has some information on that. It's not necessarily the greatest information, but, and that's actually about all I really have. I have here for questions if anybody has anything. I don't have much else.
Well, it's probably gonna get back to you, but I see these two ladies just come in, and I brought it up before about, the bumps.
Speed bumps.
Speed bumps. You wanna come up? Just come up and, they're in the school area, pretty much.
Which school?
Mulberry
Middle School.
Middle.
Just tell them who's
Say
on
your
the
name and address into the microphone, please.
Lisa Williams, 407 Southeast Fifth Avenue. And on Fifth Avenue, the cars, they speed through going to the school and they speed out coming from the school. And I have grandkids and, you know, they on their bicycles and scooters and stuff, and if they run out in front of one of them, they're gonna probably end up dead. Instead of somebody was going slow, they might just get bumped or hit. And, Ms. Dempsey on the other end, she was complaining the same thing, but she has a grandson also.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had mentioned it before, and I know you was in the process of getting that
Yeah,
done.
we have a list. I met with the paver a week and a half ago that will be installing the speed bumps. We had a list from various ones that have come up at the meetings. Some were, I don't remember which ones, we eliminated about two, I think 6 locations because they were just, it wouldn't have worked. Hard to explain. One was right next to a stop sign, for instance, and it just didn't make any sense. I believe yours is scheduled to be done.
Yeah, but they don't stop at the stop sign either.
So we have some roads being paved this summer, two streets. And if we get them to, they'll charge us to do speed bumps for us, including painting them and everything, if they're on site. Otherwise, a speed bump is a couple $1,000 in mobilization charges and everything else. But we get them for free if everybody's already in the city paving other roads. And they always have leftover asphalt all on the trucks, and they have a crew there, so, I met with them, there is a date, 2 days scheduled back to back. I don't really go by those dates, because anytime they get a lot of rain, they start falling behind, because they can't pave when it's wet at all. Even a few little showers, they have to call off paving for the day. So there are several that are on there, and Jamie has been compiling a list for me with all the, whenever somebody comes up and asks about them. So we presented that list to the paper, we drove around, and I rode around with him and John, and we went to each location, and you might see some spray paint on the road in some of these locations as well, we'll remind them, so. And another line of defense is obviously to talk to the sheriff's office about where this is going on, if you can kind of pinpoint hours that it's happening, if it's just before school, just after school, at rush hour times. Sometimes that's very helpful, they can put a car over there.
Yeah, they've been out before. Should I come back up? Okay, just talk right here.
If you wanna say something, you need to come to the microphone.
Okay.
So it's on the tape.
I'm not sure, but it might have been about 3, maybe 4 years ago, I did complain with the police, and they did sit right there on the corner, but if they see the police,
They slow down.
they slow down.
Same thing in my house. Same. You through?
Yeah, I was already.
Alright.
Yes.
Attorney.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Let me pick up where your city manager left off. So in the background, over the past several months, we have been working to try to acquire property along State Road 37 for potential move for the municipal city complex. And we finally reached what we thought was an agreement with the seller of the potential land. And a confidential offer was made using municipal statutes. That offer has been rejected. So, yeah, it was an asking price offer, and unfortunately, because of the way that the seller's organization was made, it was a trust. The beneficiary of the trust, which held voting rights, did not want to sell the property. Now that's still under some level of discussions. I've reached out to the realtor involved in the transaction, let them know that as the municipal attorney for Mulberry, that we would likely hold that offer open as long as they wanted to consider it, but that does take us back to a different chase piece of land. So your manager and I are gonna be working on that, potentially to identify where their next piece of land may be and to move forward with an offer there too. So, but that's an unfortunate piece of news I have to share, and I wish I could have shared better news. I wish I could have brought you a contract. I'll let Rick tell you that if he wants to. My recommendation is you talk about that off record, because right now at this point, since we put in an offer and it's not technically public record based on Florida law. So yeah, but it was a unique piece of land that was situated for about what the acreage was we needed.
6 acres.
Give or take, something along this line.
Yeah.
There are several other things that I have, just to let everyone know what I've been working on. You have been in close contact with DEP's SRF unit, dealing with your most recent project, SRF approval. If you'll recall, it was the Lift Station 1 improvements project that you approved the SRF loan on. We did finally reach an agreement on that text. We've got the documents changed, so we're hoping to have that in a position to sign shortly. We also are going to need to make some changes to a couple of other versions of the SRF loan there. So you'll see some resolutions coming before you approving amendments to SRF loans, but that's in the works. But we spent about 2 weeks working on that and getting that resolved for you. There's a lot of, I think Ron left off his report, there's a lot of planning matters in the works that he and I are going to be working on, some of which the commissioners have brought up before. We're still working on getting a date set so we can have that meeting. We hope to have some information back to you folks on the various items y'all brought to our attention here over the last month and a half or so. Other than that, we're just business as usual. It's busy in the city. So, happy to answer. Yes, sir.
You probably said it, but the land that the city manager wanted? They didn't like the offer, they wanted more, or you still in discussion?
It's a great question. They liked the offer. The offer met their asking terms. At least what their advertised asking terms were. And, so the gentleman who was in charge of collecting solicitations, offers to buy, took it back to his team and his team rejected it. Yeah, so that set up a real interesting scenario here where you now have a realtor who's procured, done his job, and probably is entitled to a broker's commission, even though it's not been a sale. So, that's a private matter. I'm letting them figure that out. What I've done, I believe that's the right answer for you guys, is to say, we'll hold our offer open as long as y'all are working through that. But we are gonna turn our attention to other parcels of land, so.
Well, I would just like to say, if the city manager, that's really what he'd like to have. And if they wanna jack the price up a little bit more, I think we can get together, and that's just my opinion,
Come back with
to make it work. If they want a little bit more money.
Yeah, I'm not sure what their reason was, because they could have increased the asking price at any time, and they didn't choose to. So when we offered the full amount that they were asking, we thought we would get it. And then it just said, no. I don't know if there's some sentimental attachment to the land. I can't imagine that there is. It's just a pile of dirt, but,
It's a nice pile of dirt. Yeah.
So I don't know, it may very well be that that might be a little bit, that might be part of what it is, we don't really know why, I don't know, unless you know.
No, I haven't gotten any of those indications, Coach. I don't think that $20,000 or $30,000 extra would get the deal done, for example.
Right.
From what I understand, I don't think it's sentimental value, but it's somebody that just doesn't want to move forward selling the property. And I don't know whether that's because they think it's valued significantly more, or I wasn't privy to that information. At least the realtor didn't share that to me. So, where we left is exactly what I told you. I said, the offer's open. We're gonna look at other parcels. Why don't you go take that back and talk amongst your people and tell them that, you should get your commission, and, maybe that'll work in getting them ready to sell the land. I don't know. So, but we'll have to see how that all works out.
But I just didn't want to stand in the way of, city manager.
I see what you're saying, you're sort of authorizing us to throw a little more skin in the game.
Right.
to get the project.
We could talk about alternative strategies as well too.
Okay.
And so there's other approaches that we could take, potentially, so.
All right.
You had one more thing?
I do, I have one more quick thing. On that cart, please don't try to wheel it, because those things weigh 200 pounds apiece, and that cart's probably rated for 120 pounds. Those are the valves that, I know some of you folks have seen these before. I kind of brought them out for Commissioner Knight. I think Commissioner Devine said he hadn't seen them before. In the ground, so you see the little round metal things in the ground, you pop those off and you see the guy with the tool. And that's basically would go on the end of this square thing on the end. And then that valve there is attached, goes between two pipes, water pipes. And what that's made for is controlling, if you have a water line break somewhere, you can turn this valve and close this valve, just like a valve or a faucet kind of concept at your house. And that's there specifically, and there's valves all around the city. They're mapped, they're all around the city. They have to be exercised periodically to make sure they don't rust shut or whatever. And that one there, if you were to look down inside of it, you'll see the little, it's a gate valve. The thing that, as you screw that thing, the thing that comes down and prevents the water going from one pipe to the other pipe is non-existent, which it is in a lot of the valves in the city. So we're putting together a valve replacement program. We've been working on this off and on for a couple of years, where we're gonna try to take these valves. Now, the problem is that the valve's job is to stop water flow. So now we have to figure out how to stop the water flow that goes to the thing that doesn't stop the water flow. So what you'll see is that you'll see a valve there, a nice shiny orange valve that has a kind of a rubber thing, that as you were to turn that, the rubber thing kind of goes down, seats itself, and it seals the water 100%. And then you'll see this metal thing that's rusted and rotted away there, which is why we have a really difficult time when there's a water line break, isolating that water line break. So I just want to let you know, as I come to you and say, hey, we're going to put some money in the budget for a valve replacement program or something along those lines, or we had a water line break and we had to call, they actually have companies that come out and they put what they call line stops in. And they come and dig up a big grave-sized hole over here and one down there. And they come along and they cut in these valves that are permanently put in place. They're very expensive, they're about $10,000 a piece. But if you have a major water line break and you can't shut your water off, that's the option that you have. I think it's Ridgeline or somebody, John has stepped out. That's the company that comes out, they come out at 2 o'clock in the morning and they're out there doing this thing. So, as we go along, we are trying to eliminate these valves, these bad valves, and put good valves in there, as well as pipes. We're also working on, there's potentially some money out there for some pipe replacement as well. We're working on a program currently with our engineers to identify where those pipes, water pipes, need to be replaced. And as you can imagine, in a city this size, you know, the center of town was the center of town. And then you have Northeast First Avenue, Northwest First Avenue, so on. So probably a lot of the older streets are the closest ones to 37, for instance. So those are the ones that are probably in more need of repair. And so we're working on that, and then we'll eventually get to the outskirts. Whereas if you go to Bridgeport Lakes, you see brand new, PVC pipes there that don't rust, don't rot out, and so on. But this is what's, and actually a lot of the water lines and sewer lines are actually old reclaimed pipes from the mines that were donated here 75 years ago. Here, use these pipes. Still got a couple of years left in them. So that's what we're faced with. That's an ongoing, on top of everything else we do, we're trying to also get on top of the infrastructure issues. It's not glamorous, it's underground, it doesn't show, you can't drive by with your kids and point to it and say, hey, guess what, I had that valve changed. It's nicer to be able to point to a nice library or something like that. But this is underground stuff that's very expensive, not very glamorous, but it's definitely needs to be done. I encourage you to play with that valve. Just don't try to lift it. That's it, that's all I have, I'm sorry.
City clerk?
Sharon is away at a city clerk conference, so thank you guys for taking it easy on me for my first meeting. The only thing I have is we are currently taking applications for volunteers for the Planning and Zoning Board and the Zoning Board of Appeals. You can get the application on the city website or by contacting us here at City Hall. That's all I have.
Thank you. Anything else, commissioners, before we adjourn? Then we will stand adjourned. Thank everybody for coming.